Good morning, everyone. This is a short presentation on our lesson number 4 for unit number 1, and we're dealing with the big topic of rethinking reading. If you look at this slide, you can see that in class we covered 3 things. For our academic notes, we'll be talking about generating ideas for college writing assignments. And then we, in class, we'll have a short discussion on what everyone learned about different careers and the amount of writing that takes place in those careers. And then finally, the main part of the lesson will deal with college reading, rethinking reading. So if you're not with us, pull out your academic notes, and of course, you're going to pause this video because it will take you longer to do so. But I want you to start off in your academic notes. And again, the title is Coming Up with Topics for Writing. So I want you to imagine that you are applying to Princeton. And a few years ago, I went onto their college website to find a prompt for students to write about. And so the prompt is on the right-hand side where it says, "What's your story?" So if you were to write 1,000 words, would you just brainstorm for a couple minutes and think about things that you could share with other people? So in your academic notes, make a list. And then once you've done that, I'd like you to go back and think about what would actually work for admission essays, and more importantly, what they are looking for when they ask you to write those essays. I'd like you to think about this famous quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, "The writer is an explorer. Every step is an adventure into a new land." And it's a good quote to think about when you write. You want what you say to be original, to discuss a topic that no one else will discuss when this admission officer or a committee reads your application. And topics just are not invented out of the dust and we're either good or not good at it. There are lots of techniques that we can learn to become better at choosing the right topics. So on this slide, there are a couple of resources for you to think about coming up with ideas. The first is this infographic. Pause the video and look at some of the information it says there that you can transfer into your academic notes. The second one is a really good article written by one of the English teachers on SLIC's campus. His name is Benjamin Solomon, and he talks about having writer's block and overcoming it. Click on the link to that video, to that article that he has written, read the article, and write a few things down that stood out to you about his article on coming up with better topics. Some other things you can write in your notes for academic notes today is when we write for college, there's different expectations. A teacher doesn't want to read what they've already heard 1,000 times. So how do you do that? You can challenge old answers, and the second thing you can do is contribute new answers. So let me just quickly explain what that means. You'll see a picture at the top left-hand corner. This woman has been the presidential historian for almost 30 years of her career. She's over 70 and she still has this job. So she is asked every couple of years to pick a different president and write something new about them through research that she has done. She's won the Pulitzer Prize for one of her presidential history books called Team of Rivals, which was so new because when she was asked to write something about Lincoln, she knew that almost everything had already been written about him, and there's no way she could interview the guy. So she found through research that all of the people in his cabinet actually ran against him in the primaries on the Republican side or in the finals when he went against the other party for the presidency. And so he brought them on, and so the book is divided into sections. I've read it, and it talks about each of those individuals and what they had written in their different writings about Lincoln and how his idea of unifying different voices really made a great cabinet. She's also written some others that I've listed on this screen. Then the second one is contributing new answers. So any person who gets a master's or a or a doctoral degree from a university has to write a major paper. A master's is 50 to 100 pages, a dissertation sometimes 300 to 500 pages long, and on a new topic. When anyone who's working on the master's degree, they have to go through a committee and make sure that their specific angle has never been researched before. And it's quite a task. I remember that exercise as I was working on my master's degree, but it is possible. This other one talks about comparing the types of writing that's done in college versus high school. So pause the video and write down some ideas that will help you about coming up with ideas for topics for papers in college in your academic notes. And so finally, I went back to the Purdue application a year ago, and one of the same prompts they had was the same one that I had seen in 2017. These were the 4 prompts that students would write on. And so I want you to spend a little bit of time picking one now and hopefully coming up with a better idea. And then after you've done that, I want you to look at a really good one. It is in your packet, stapled packet of resources. In 2016, a young lady, her name was Brittany Stinson, applied and was accepted into 5 Ivy League schools and Stanford. The Stanford acceptance rates is between 4 and 5%. Most of the Ivy League schools are, most of them are less than 10%. So it's very difficult to get into the school. But she writes about going to Costco. And I'd like you to read her application letter to give you a better idea of coming up with something new, original, and what it says. As you read it, think about what she is revealing to the admissions committee through her application. The next part of class, we discussed some of the occupations that people interviewed in the class and what they learned about writing at work, those aha moments. The main part of class today deals with rethinking reading. One of my major goals in English 1010, this is my goal, is that whenever you read like a writer. And what I mean by that is that you pause and think, what is the writer doing in this chapter or in this introduction or developing the idea? What is the writer doing and how are they going about doing that? And so that we're learning techniques of good writing as we read. The other end of it then is write like a reader. That having the attitude that when I write something, I want it to be fluent and easy to read on the other end. So if we reread what we have written with the idea that someone else is going to read it, what will they stumble across? It will allow us to fix a lot of glaring problems with it. As we think about rethinking reading, I want you to think about how you learn how to read and what a difficult skill that must be as a kindergartner, as a first grader. I learned how to read through sight words. Most of you have probably learned through phonetics. In class, I shared a story of my granddaughter. It's kind of interesting about learning to read at a very young age and mother not even realizing that that's what she was doing. This statistic goes over this is from Pew Research from 2019. It talks about who hasn't read a book in the past 12 months. And as you look at the statistics, part of the conclusions that I get is that the more money and the more educated people are, the more they read. And so it's a good reminder of the importance of reading as a lifelong skill. So in your resources, I've included a document. I also put a link to that document here about some of my favorite books. If you're ever wondering what to read, and I know students ask me all the time, what's a book? I put some examples on this slide of books that I like, along with why I like them. Anyway, the document, if you click on it or you go to your resources, there are a whole bunch of different types of books that I've read that I enjoy. Right now, these are two of my books that I've been reading. I try in the summer to go away from the classics, since I spend a lot of the school year reading those for school and other purposes. So these are both contemporary fiction books that are really good. In class, we walked around and answered some questions about reading and kind of get a feel for what people in the class think about reading. And then I assigned every sixth person one of the next 6 slides to read it and summarize and teach the rest of the people in their group. But if you're not here, you're going to have to go over all 6 slides to learn some statistics about reading. So make sure you slow down and read the contents and the articles that are attached to some of these 6 slides. Finally, for your homework, I'm giving you an assignment that is typical of a college reading assignment. So there are 2 things. These are not in the staple portions of your resources. They're in the hand ones that you can pull out, and because I want you to annotate them. Both of these articles deal with the topic of Utah Women in Leadership Project. This came about from a bunch of professors at UVU right after 2010, when Governor Gary Herbert set an initiative. He called it the 2020 Initiative, that by the year 2020, 80% of the Utah population will have some college degree or trade degree. And just to illustrate a lot of things that are behind the scenes with that initiative that took place, you guys taking ACTs now in school and having that first ACT test free from the legislature is part of that 2020 initiative. Anyway, in 2010, when they started this, UVU decided to get involved, and a big group of people did some research and found that there was such a gap between men and women in the state of Utah as far as higher education is concerned. So the first article, written in 2010, gives you some background of that discrepancy. And as you read it, I want you to think about why there was such a gap, and does that gap still exist? The second one, after you read this one and annotate it, there is another one that was written in the last year or 2. I can't remember which one I pulled out, but they have hundreds of articles that this committee has worked on for the past decade. And as you read it, annotate it, and read to come up with some answers to the dilemma of women and higher education, and try to piece together what has happened in the last decade so that we can have a discussion on it in class. As you do that and annotate it, you can think of some of these types of questions to write in the margins. Notice the evidence that's used, what assumptions is the author making, what are you making as the audience, what are you noticing the big problems. And part of reading for college is coming to class to engage in a conversation with your classmates. So we will be doing that next time. It's one of 2 assignments that you have. So reading these 2 articles, annotating them, will be an assignment so that you're ready to have a college level discussion on this topic. The second thing, I want you to think back to your own reading, and it shows you this in your syllabus, just on this handout right here. It says, explore your history as a reader. Think back to moments, scenes, situations, or people you associate with reading. Maybe you remember sitting on the couch with your father as he reads Lassie Comes Home. So I want you to write a page reflection about that experience of you and reading, and bring both the annotations and your reading response to class on Thursday. We'll see you then. Thank you.